Good evening. The bodies of 8 Hong Kong tourists killed in a bus hijacking in the Philippine capital on Monday have been flown back home on a chartered flight.
Most of the survivors were also on the flight, along with family members, at the end of a tragedy that has plunged the city into mourning. ATV's Anne Choi reports.
It was their final journey home after a holiday in Manila that turned into a bloody nightmare. The bodies of the 8 Hong Kong tourists who were killed in the bus siege in Manila on Monday night were carefully loaded onto hearses at around noon today. The caskets of Fu Chek Yan, 58-year-old Ken Leung, his 2 daughters Doris, aged 21, and 14-year-old Jessie, 51-year-old Wang Zi Lam, his 44-year-old wife Yang Yi Hua, and sister-in-law Yang Yi Kam, and the group's tour guide 31-year-old Masa Zeb were taken to the airport to be flown back home this evening. Before that, a simple Buddhist ritual was carried out. Undersecretary for Security Lai Tong Kwok, who was in Manila to help, was accompanying the victims, their families, and most of the survivors flying back home. On the flight was injured 15-year-old Tracy Wong and her younger brother, who was set free by the gunmen before the bloodshed happened. Both their parents were killed in the siege. Yik Siu Ling, who sustained serious wounds to his hands and lower jaw, and husband Joe Chan with gunshot wounds to his arm, were put on a separate special medical flight chartered by the Hong Kong government. Not everyone would be returning home this evening. 18-year-old Jason Leung, who underwent surgery for a shattered skull, is still unconscious and in intensive care in a Manila hospital. His mother, Amy Leung, who lost both her daughters and her husband, is staying behind to look after him. The survivors of the siege and their family members were greeted by a media frenzy as they left the hotel. Once at Manila's International Airport, a solemn ceremony in memory of the dead was carried out. One after another, the caskets were lifted onto the plane. Others, including the survivors and grieving family members, boarded the flight at the same time. Liu Jianchao, China's ambassador to the Philippines, was there to see them off. For most of them, the nightmare in the Philippines has ended, but the grieving is far from over. Anne Choi, ATV News.
Well, the government says it cannot interfere with the probe into the bus siege, despite calls for officials from Hong Kong to join Filipino investigators.
Many are calling for calm here, given threats of a backlash against the Filipino community and reports about domestic helpers being fired by angry employers. ATV's Dan To reports.
As Hong Kong slowly recovers from the shock of Monday's hostage shootout, government buildings kept flags lowered at half-mast today. Many in the city have been deeply affected since the horrific ordeal was played out live on television. The Home Affairs Bureau has set up memorials in all 18 districts around Hong Kong to provide residents with a space to offer their condolences and let out some of the emotions built up since Monday. At one of the memorials, Civic Party leader Audrey Yu said she wrote a letter to Chief Executive Donald Tsang with several requests for the Security Bureau's special meeting in Letchgo tomorrow. Like many others, one of the requests was to ask the Philippine government to allow Hong Kong experts join in the investigation. Secretary for Security Ambrose Lee said while the Bureau has not made a verbal request, it did ask in writing, but the investigation is outside Hong Kong's jurisdiction.
There's no way that we can participate in the investigation of the event, but we will urge the Philippine authorities to conduct a thorough, just, and transparent investigation, and we want the report to be ready as soon as possible.
Lee also said the coroner's court may have to open an inquiry into the deaths of the tourists.
There's a possibility that we will conduct an autopsy in Hong Kong.
Autopsies have already been performed on 5 of the 8 bodies in the Philippines, and Hong Kong experts were present in 2 cases. The families of the others have refused to have the autopsies done by Filipino investigators. Dissatisfied with Philippine President Benigno Aquino's speech yesterday, in which he defended the way the bungled rescue operation was carried out, protesters marched up to the Philippine consulate again today to demand a more sincere apology from him. And over at the Star Ferry Pier in Tsim Sha Tsui, some people were out gathering signatures.
To ask the Philippine government to say sorry for the incident 2 days ago in Manila.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's become a tense few days for the 140,000 Filipino migrant workers and thousands of professionals and residents in Hong Kong, many of whom are bearing the brunt of misdirected, harsh comments while coping with the reality of the ineptitude their nation's police force showed in the crisis. Members of the city's biggest Filipino labor union expressed their condolences and shared the shock and grief of the bloodbath. But they fear an unfair backlash, reporting at least one sacking of a domestic helper by an employer reacting to the hostage incident. The internet has been awash with angry comments directed at the Philippines and its people, with some saying they will never visit the country again and others saying they've fired their domestic helpers and will look for a local or mainland Chinese replacement. The Asian Human Rights Commission expressed deep concern over people blowing the tragedy out of proportion. It said in a statement, this tragedy should not become a conflict of nationalities and it must not at any point be seen as such. Renowned Hong Kong Kung Fu star Jackie Chan stated in his social microblogging site Twitter that Filipinos need not worry. Hong Kong is a nation built by a lot of different people. Don't worry, we do not hate. Diane To, ATV News.
There's also been a day of mourning in the Philippines where commanders of the bungled rescue operation have been suspended pending further investigation.
Part of that investigation involves testing the guns used by the assault teams to see if any of the victims were killed by police bullets. ATV's Ben O'Rourke reports.
The family of Rolando Mendoza, who Manila police say gunned down the 8 hostages on Monday, asked for forgiveness on Philippine television. The former policeman's sister, Kathy Mendoza Salgado, said they felt what the families of the dead hostages felt about the loss of their loved ones. The official line is that Mendoza shot dead all of the victims with his automatic rifle. The police say the 200 members of the Special Weapons and Tactics team involved in the bus siege have handed in their weapons for tests to see whether any of the hostages were hit by stray bullets from them. At the same time, 4 senior SWAT officers have been suspended while the department is investigated by the police for possible liabilities and lapses in the bungled operation. The probe will also look into what improvements police can make when handling hostage situations. Orlando Yebro, one of the police negotiators, is also calling for a review of crisis policies, saying this was the first time he'd seen such talks deteriorate so badly. During the negotiations, Yebro was often close enough to the gunman to subdue him, and experts are asking why he didn't take the chance when Mendoza had his guard down. The whole saga is being seen as an early blow for Philippine President Benigno Aquino, who declared today a day of mourning for the victims. Locals and Hong Kong people living in the Philippines flocked to the scene where the hijacked bus was still standing in the middle of the road in central Manila this morning. Many laid flowers and prayed, while others took pictures of the bullet-ridden coach on their mobile phones. Among them was a friend of the bus driver Alberto Lubang, who managed to escape only to be accused later of being an accessory. In a television interview, Lubang denied being part of Mendoza's plan, and his friend also dismissed the idea. The police have admitted defects in their handling of the hostage crisis, which played out on live television broadcast around the world, allowing experts plenty of time to compile a long list of faults, the most obvious being that Mendoza, like them, could see exactly what was going on the whole time. Ultimately, it was the televised arrest of his brother that Lubang said sent Mendoza into a rage, firing wildly inside the bus. Many were also puzzled to see a team that was supposed to have special weapons and tactics seemingly operating without either. Another major complaint was that police had numerous opportunities throughout the day to take out Mendoza but didn't. Philippine police officials defended the decision not to shoot him because they said it was against the law to shoot hostage takers during negotiations. Regarding the apparent lack of training or plan, the officials claim the men were unfamiliar with the layout of the bus. However, they did admit there should have been a delay on statements to the media, so Mendoza wasn't informed about everything they were doing. Mendoza took over the bus to draw attention to his efforts to get an appeal hearing for his dismissal from the force for alleged extortion. His family says the letter he sent to the Ombudsman was returned to him unopened, with the words "Return to sender" written on the envelope. Ben O'Rourke, ATV News.
Turning to other local news, a 6-year-old girl died today after falling 36